So yesterday the Chancellor announced an additional £2 billion of funding for social care in England. That's £1 billion in 2017-18, 0.7 billion in 2018-19, and a smaller 0.3 billion in 2019-20. Once again, the eagle-eyed of you may have noticed that that is lower than in the scorecard, and that's because I'm talking about England, whereas the scorecard includes a UK-wide costing. So this is a reasonably large amount of funding. It compares to 24.4 billion that we spent on local authority organised social care last financial year, and it compares even more favourably to the 16.4 billion that we spent specifically on adult social care. And if we look just at that increase in 2017-18, that's equivalent to 6.1% of what we spent on adult social care last year. Now, local authorities were already going to be getting more funding for social care over the next few years through this thing called the Improved Better Care Fund. Now, what this does is it provides temporary additional funding over the next few years to tide them over until they get that funding. That means that what it doesn't do is really change what we can expect for social care funding in 2019-20 and beyond. This is very much a temporary measure. However, although this funding is specified for social care, the way the ring fence works, or is likely to work, is that local authorities will have to justify that they are spending more on social care than they otherwise would be. That's really difficult to prove because we don't know what they would spend on social care in the absence of this funding. As a result, it's possible that local authorities could use some of this funding to spend on other service areas. So how do I tell you what's going to happen to social care funding? What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you two different scenarios. And in each of those scenarios, what's going to be different is how local authorities choose to allocate their budgets. So to start with, let's assume that local authorities take any funding that they have that's ring-fenced for social care and they spread it over all of their service areas in proportion to what they were otherwise going to be spending on those areas. In other words, they take the ring-fence funding, they spread it over their entire budget. Now, if that were the case, then social care, specifically adult social care spending over the next few years between 2016-17 and 2019-20 would fall by 2.8%. Then after the budget, we've had more funding, so spending would be higher for the next 3 years, and that cut would be reduced to 2.1%. Now, another scenario. Now let's assume, probably as the government intends, that local authorities take all of this ring-fence funding and they give it to social care, adult social care, on top of what they were otherwise going to spend. Oh no, I've missed a point. Briefly to note, before we get to the second scenario, adult social care has been cut a lot. The adult social care has been cut by 7.5% between 2009-10 and 2016-17. Back to my second scenario. So now we're assuming all of the ring-fenced funding goes to adult social care. Now, if that's the case, then adult social care spending would increase by 8.9% between 2016-17 and 2019-20. Since the budget, what the budget measures have done is they have brought forward that sharp increase in spending. And the overall increase between 2016-17 and 2019-20 would now be 10.9%. It's particularly notable that if you look just at the change between 2016-17 and 2017-18, that was going to be 0.5%. Now, with the budget measures, that's almost 7%. That's a pretty large rise in social care spending in 1 year, and it takes us almost back to where social care spending was in 2009-10. Now, obviously these are two different scenarios, and in practice, social care spending over the next few years is likely to fall somewhere between the two solid lines. Local authorities have a trade-off. They can decide where to put this funding in between adult social care and the other services that they have to fund. Now we can see this through this graph. So what this is going to show is on the bottom we're going to have cuts to social care spending, specifically adult social care spending, where a positive number is a cut. And on the y-axis we've got real cuts to other service spending, and that includes children's social services. If we take our first scenario, and social care over the next few years is cut by 2.1%, that means that other service spending will also be cut by 2.1%. However, if we take the second scenario and we see social care increasing by 10.9%, other service spending is going to have to fall by 10.4%. In reality, local authorities are probably going to locate somewhere along this line. Now, what the measures announced yesterday did was give local authorities more money. So it's basically loosen this constraint. Hence, the line has shifted down. In other words, for any given cut to local service spending, local authorities can spend a bit more on social care if they so wish. To conclude, yesterday we were given some new temporary funding for adult social care, which is going to tide local authorities over to this new until this improved better care funding hits in towards the end of the Parliament. But what it doesn't really do is make much difference to spending in 2019-20 or beyond. Fundamentally, though, we don't actually know what local authority spending on social care will be, because it's at their discretion, and it depends how much this ring fence is going to bind. A final point to note, the Chancellor yesterday didn't raise how this was going to be distributed, and given the different experience of different parts of the country, that's going to be incredibly important and something to watch out for.